What kind of man saves a family only to lose everything he built? That question has haunted me every single morning since the day I walked out of my own company with nothing but a cardboard box and a court order that changed 3 little girls' lives. I used to believe power meant control, wealth meant security, and compassion was a luxury for people who had time to care. But then I met a single mother on the edge of losing everything, and without warning, her fight became mine. I didn't plan on caring. I didn't plan on feeling. And I sure as hell didn't plan on risking my empire for strangers. But sometimes life throws you into a moment so raw, so real that you either run or become someone entirely new. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll show you the exact moment when a broken man finally understood what it means to come home. And trust me, what happens next will shock you. This is just another eviction, Daniel Whitmore told himself as he adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit walking into Boston District Court. But something about today felt off. Maybe it was the chill in the courtroom, or the nervous silence clinging to the air like fog. Or maybe it was the woman standing at the defendant's table holding a crumpled folder against her chest like it was a shield. "Your Honor, please," she pleaded. "Just give me a little more time." Her voice cracked midway through the sentence, but she forced herself to stay standing. Daniel narrowed his eyes. This was supposed to be routine. After all, for over 20 years, Whitmore Development had dealt with non-paying tenants through cold procedures and cleaner paperwork. He had only come today out of curiosity, a reminder to his legal team that even a CEO could get his hands dirty when necessary. But now, standing a few feet from Emily Carter, a tired woman in her 30s with frizzy hair pulled into a rushed ponytail, 3 small daughters clinging to her legs, Daniel found himself unable to look away. "We haven't paid in 8 months," Emily admitted, "but I've just been hired at St. Mary's. I can start making payments again. I just need a chance." The judge rubbed his temples. "Ms. Carter, the law doesn't change for anyone. The property has been in default. Whitmore Development is within its rights." Mama, the smallest girl, whispered, tugging at Emily's coat. "Are we gonna lose our house?" "Shh." "Baby," Emily bent down, kissing her forehead. "I'm hungry," the little one added. Her voice wasn't loud, but in that heavy courtroom silence, it landed like a bullet in Daniel's gut. For a moment, the room blurred. He'd heard hundreds of excuses, threats, manipulative sob stories. But this wasn't rehearsed. That little voice didn't know how to lie. His attorney stood. "Your Honor, Whitmore Development has already extended multiple deadlines. Ms. Carter hasn't met a single one." "That's not true," Emily burst out. "I emailed 3 times asking to renegotiate." No one ever responded. Daniel's jaw clenched. He had established a 48-hour reply protocol for hardship requests. If her emails had been ignored, someone in his company had broken procedure. The judge turned to her. "Do you have proof?" Emily fumbled through the folder. Her hands trembled. "Here, emails with dates and timestamps." Daniel leaned forward. The judge scanned the paper, sighed, and said, "Still, no payments have been made. I'm sorry." Emily's knees buckled as he ruled in favor of the company. 10 days to vacate. "No," she gasped, then immediately covered her mouth as her daughters looked up at her, wide-eyed. One started to cry. The middle girl wrapped her arms around her older sister, who tried to look brave but was clearly losing the battle. Daniel sat frozen. For 2 decades, eviction had meant numbers in spreadsheets, contracts, court orders. But now, staring at this unraveling family, something cracked. Maybe it was the girl's eyes. Maybe it was the echo of a past he tried to forget. Either way, he didn't move. When the courtroom cleared, he stood and approached Emily cautiously. "Ms. Carter," he said, not even knowing why. She turned. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're him, Daniel Whitmore." Her voice was ice. "You're the one putting us out." Daniel paused. For once, the words didn't come. "I want to look into your case personally. Why it's over." Her daughters stared up at him. Not angry, not scared, just confused, like he was a puzzle that didn't make sense. Emily took her daughter's hands. "Come on, girls, we've got packing to do." As they left, Daniel remained rooted in place, feeling something twist in his chest, a sense of shame that was unfamiliar and unwelcome. Back at his 20-story office tower overlooking the Boston skyline, he couldn't focus. He asked his assistant to bring the Carter file. As he scanned the records, details leapt out. Emily had made every payment for 2 years. Her delinquency began 10 months ago, right when a hospital report stated she'd been admitted for emergency appendicitis. Recovery time 6 weeks. Why hadn't anyone flagged this? He found the 3 ignored emails. In the first, she offered to pay $300 a month until she stabilized. The second, she offered $400. The third, just a month ago, she begged for a chance to pay $500 monthly, juggling 2 jobs and raising 3 kids alone. This wasn't irresponsibility. It was a mother clawing to stay afloat. He picked up the phone. "Stephen, why weren't Emily Carter's emails answered?" His operations manager hesitated. "Because our policy says no renegotiation after 3 months of missed payments." "You wrote that rule, Daniel." Daniel hung up and stared out at the city, this empire he built by shutting off his emotions, by turning away when people begged. That night he couldn't sleep. By sunrise, he was already driving aimlessly. Without planning to, he ended up on Elmwood Lane outside the yellow house marked for eviction. It was small, worn but tidy. Through the gate, he saw 3 girls playing with makeshift dolls in the dirt. Emily's voice called from the backyard. "Grace, don't run so fast." He stepped out of the car, suddenly unsure of what he was doing. "Good morning," he said at the gate. Emily appeared, laundry basket in hand, froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see the house. It's not your problem anymore. We'll be gone in 10 days. Her youngest, Lily, walked up to the gate and peered at him curiously. "Are you the man in the suit?" Daniel knelt down. "Yes, I was in court yesterday. Can you make it so we stay?" The question hit harder than expected. Daniel glanced at Emily. She looked exhausted, guarded. Her eyes were glassy with withheld tears. "Things are complicated," he murmured. "The grown-ups always say that when they don't want to help," said Grace, age 9, matter-of-factly. Daniel stood there speechless. The girls were right. Every excuse he'd used his whole life suddenly sounded pathetic. As the girls went inside, Emily turned to him. "Look, I don't know what kind of guilt trip brought you here, but please don't confuse my daughters more. We've been through enough." "I read your emails," he said quietly. Emily froze. How convenient. Now that it's too late. "I didn't know. I should have." She gave a bitter laugh. "Just leave, Mr. Whitmore. I need to hold myself together, and I can't do that with you standing here." Daniel turned and walked away, her words slicing deeper than any boardroom insult ever had. As he drove off, the narrow streets blurred into memories. The porch, the laundry line, the kids playing with nothing. It was all too familiar. He'd lived this before. He had been one of those kids. His mother, Laura, had worked double shifts to keep them fed. He remembered her coming home so tired she slept upright on the couch. He had sworn he'd make it out, and he had. But at what cost? His mother died, waiting for the help he never sent. His sister Laura stopped talking to him after the funeral, saying, "You can build homes for strangers, but not save your own." Now sitting in his BMW outside the rundown house where he'd once lived, something icy slid down his spine. His sister had married someone named Carter. Was it possible? Could Emily Carter be family? And if she was, how many more people had he abandoned in the name of success? As the morning sun rose higher, a single heavy question began to form in Daniel's mind. If helping her means tearing down everything I've built, am I ready to live with that, or live with myself if I don't? It had been years since Daniel Whitmore returned to Old South End, the Boston neighborhood, where his childhood had been shaped by the sharp edges of poverty and the quiet strength of a single mother. But that morning, as he sat in his BMW staring at the cracked windows of his abandoned childhood home, time folded in on itself. The paint was chipped, the weeds had reclaimed the front porch, and in his chest a long-buried ache stirred to life. He wasn't there out of nostalgia. He was searching for answers. Not just about Emily Carter, the woman whose eviction had suddenly grown roots deep in his conscience, but about himself, his past, his choices. He remembered his mother, Laura, sitting on that very porch eating dinner alone because she'd rather go hungry than let her kids miss a meal. And now here he was, a grown man with power and wealth, standing on the edge of becoming the very kind of man his mother had taught him never to be. Later that night, he dug through his personal email archives and found something that made his blood run cold. An old, unread message from his sister Laura, dated nearly 2 years ago. "Daniel, I'm reaching out one last time. Emily Carter. My husband's cousin is trying to get back on her feet. She's hardworking and desperate for a job. Do you have anything at Whitmore she could do? Please just take a moment to read this. I wouldn't ask if it didn't matter. He hadn't even opened it. The guilt was immediate, sharp, and merciless. He had built an empire by tuning out other people's problems, treating them as inefficiencies, liabilities line items. But this was personal. Emily wasn't just another name on an eviction order. She was family. The next morning, Daniel did what no one expected. He walked into Whitmore Development's boardroom with a quiet fire in his eyes. I want to review all active evictions involving families with young children, he told the legal team. Stephen Blake, his partner and longtime friend, raised an eyebrow. Why we're starting a pilot program, Daniel said. A social responsibility initiative. We'll pause action on certain cases while we evaluate hardship histories and offer restructuring options. Catherine Green scoffed. Is this about that Carter woman? Daniel didn't answer. Robert Maxwell leaned forward. Daniel, you've built this company by making hard decisions. Emotions don't belong in our policies. And maybe that's the problem, Daniel replied, his voice low. Maybe we've built something so efficient, we've stripped it of humanity. By noon, rumors were flying through the company like wildfire. But Daniel didn't care. He had one goal: find a way to legally halt Emily's eviction. He stayed in his office long after the sun dipped below the skyline, poring over legal documents, title transfers, mortgage history, looking for anything that could be used to challenge the court order. At 4:57 a.m., he found a break in the chain of title. The land where Emily's house stood had been acquired years ago through a now-defunct shell company. The ownership paperwork was incomplete. Legally speaking, the eviction could be contested. Heart racing, Daniel called his personal attorney, James Cooper, and gave him the green light. File an emergency petition to suspend the eviction. Today. You realize what you're doing, right? James warned. You're filing against your own company, I know, Daniel said. And don't tell anyone, not yet. But secrets don't stay hidden for long. By the time Daniel arrived at Whitmore HQ that morning, Stephen was waiting in his office with a look that could cut steel. There's an emergency board meeting in 10 minutes, he said. When Daniel entered the room, the entire board sat in a cold semicircle. Robert folded his hands. Is it true, he asked. Did you file a court petition that jeopardizes our eviction strategy? Yes, Daniel said without flinching. I found irregularities in the title. The eviction isn't legally secure. Catherine shook her head. That case was already ruled on. You're opening us up to lawsuits and risking investor confidence, Mark Harrison added. What the hell is this, Daniel? A moral epiphany? Daniel's hands curled into fists, but he kept his tone calm. It's called accountability. No, Stephen snapped, it's called sabotage. The room erupted. Robert finally slammed his palm on the table. If you won't withdraw the petition, we'll vote. You've lost perspective, Daniel. You're risking 200 jobs and 20 years of work for one family. Daniel stood tall. Then vote. It wasn't even close. 4-1. By 10:00 a.m., Daniel Whitmore was no longer the CEO of the company he had built from scratch. He packed what little he kept in his office: a watch, a photo of his mother, a plaque from his first real estate deal, and walked out to a silence that rang louder than applause ever could. But as he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed. A notification from the court: the judge had granted the emergency stay. The eviction was officially suspended. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stared at the screen and exhaled a shaky breath. The cost was real. His empire, his title, his control, all gone. And yet, something inside him felt more steady than it had in years. That afternoon, he returned to Elmwood Lane. Emily was in the yard folding clothes into cardboard boxes. Her girls weren't home yet. He stood outside the gate holding the court notice in his hand. She looked up, and when she saw the envelope, her face froze. Is that the final notice? She asked, her voice hollow. Daniel shook his head. No, it's a court order. The eviction's been suspended. She blinked. What, you're not losing your home? At least not now. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but they weren't tears of joy. At least not yet. They were the kind of tears that come from being tired of fighting. What did it cost you? She whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her the paper and turned to leave. As he walked away for the first time, he felt the weight of his choices settle over him, not like a burden, but like armor he never knew he needed. And yet beneath the relief, a new uncertainty gnawed at him, louder than ever before. If I've already lost everything, then what do I have left to offer her and those girls? Spring came early that year in Boston, and with it something new began to bloom inside Daniel Whitmore. Something he hadn't felt in a very long time: peace. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. The morning after delivering the court order to Emily, he found himself driving back to Elmwood Lane, not out of obligation, but out of longing. He didn't knock that time. He stood across the street watching the three girls play in the front yard, like the threat of losing everything had never loomed over their heads. Lily was giggling as she twirled in circles. Grace tried to braid Chloe's hair, and for a moment the world looked exactly as it should. Emily noticed him standing there and called out, "You're just going to stand there staring, or are you coming in for coffee?" He smiled, something he rarely did, and walked through the gate like he belonged. That afternoon turned into dinner. Dinner turned into stories. And somehow a man who had once measured his time in stock reports and board meetings was now measuring it in bedtime stories, soup spoons, and the sound of children laughing. Weeks passed and Daniel did what most people assumed he wouldn't. He didn't fight to take back his company. He let go. Instead, he sold a portion of his shares and used the money to start a new consulting firm, one focused on affordable housing, tenant advocacy, and urban renewal. He named it Harborstone because that's what he wanted to be for people like Emily. Something solid, something steady. He moved out of his penthouse and into a modest apartment just 10 minutes from Emily's home. He no longer woke to emails or meetings. Now his mornings began with coffee on the balcony and the soft purring of a stray cat that had adopted him. But there was one morning that stood out above the rest. Daniel answered his phone to hear Laura's voice, his sister. "It's Lily's birthday today," she said. She made a very specific list: chocolate cake, yellow balloons, and a kitten. Daniel grinned. "I'm on it." An hour later, he pulled into the driveway with a cardboard box that wiggled every few seconds. Lily spotted him through the window and screamed, "He's here." The moment he stepped out, the three girls charged toward him like he was Santa Claus. "What's in the box?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "Why don't you take a look?" She opened it, slowly gasped, then shrieked, "It's a kitten!" Emily walked out onto the porch apron, dusted in flour. "Daniel, you didn't." He shrugged. "You told her maybe one day when there was enough money. I figured now we have enough." The girls debated names. Lily insisted the kitten be named Suit after what she used to call Daniel, the man in the suit. "You're not a suit anymore," she said, "but it still fits." He laughed. "Then Suit it is." The birthday breakfast was chaotic and perfect. There was frosting everywhere, orange juice spilled on the table, and at least 3 different arguments over who got to hold the kitten first. But Daniel wasn't watching the mess. He was watching the beauty inside it, the kind that doesn't scream, but heals you quietly from the inside out. Later, when the candles had been blown and the girls ran off to play, Emily pulled Daniel aside. "There's something I need to ask," she said. Why did you come back that second time? When you didn't have to?" Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had fought every day for her daughters, who had stood her ground against shame, poverty, and even him. "Because the first time I left," he said softly, "I didn't feel like a man. I felt like a machine. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to feel human again." Her eyes welled with tears, but she smiled. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "What's this deed? I want to buy this house, put it in your name. No more loans, no more monthly payments. Just yours." "Daniel," she whispered, "no strings, not charity, a partnership, an investment in our future. Because somewhere between that courtroom and this porch, I fell in love with your girls, and with you." She looked down at the paper, then back at him. "We're a package deal, you know. 3 girls, 1 chaotic cat, a loud house, and a woman who cries at sappy movies." He smiled. "That's exactly the deal I want." The girls, sensing something important, gathered around. "What's going on?" Chloe asked. "He's telling your mom he loves her," Laura teased from behind them. "Are you going to marry her?" Grace asked, eyes wide. Daniel looked at Emily. "That depends on her." Lily tugged Emily's hand. Say yes, Mommy. Emily laughed through tears. Yes. The girl screamed, jumped, hugged everyone, including the confused kitten. That night after everyone had gone, Daniel and Emily sat side by side on the front steps, watching the sun set behind their yellow house. The same house that almost slipped through their fingers. The same house that had changed everything. You know, Daniel whispered, I used to think home was a place you bought, a thing you owned. And now, Emily asked. Now I think home is where someone waits for you, where someone chooses you, where love shows up, even after it's lost everything. They sat in silence, fingers interlaced, watching as the sky turned gold. Because this time, Daniel didn't need numbers to know he was finally rich. He had everything that mattered. Now I want to ask you two questions. Have you ever realized too late that the life you were chasing wasn't the one you actually wanted? And do you believe a person can truly change when they're finally seen with love? What did you think of Daniel and Emily's journey? Thank you for staying with me through this emotional story. If you felt touched by this ending, comment number 3 below. If you found it average, type number 2 or number 1. If it didn't meet your expectations. Where in the world are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, drop a heart, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you next time for another powerful story that speaks to the soul.